Narcissism in itself requires a coronation, meaning a crowning of sovereignty, because it's a spiritual manifestation. See, what you have to understand is that spirit's idea is to transfer narcissistic traits and behavior within the person. Remember, I said that a personality needs a person. The question is which person. So the process commences with spiritual transfer of narcissistic traits, typically occurring under three circumstances: the manifestation of trauma based behavior from a parent, the influence of generational dynamics, or the presence of ancestral curses, right? We talked about that earlier, transmitted through parenting. It's hard to believe that parents and siblings are responsible sometimes for transferring these traits. The parent or guardian assume a sacred role in shaping a child's character through spiritual influences, and a lot of times parents are not fully aware how much impact they have on their children. Trauma or bondage experienced by parents may be spiritually transmitted to the child, leading the child to, we talked about that also earlier, you and I, leading the child to adopt a narcissistic personality, you got that right, as a spiritual defense mechanism, or sometimes even a source of strength, because they learn how to be defensive or to be strong, and that's what the spirit really is trying to embed in them. Another way is, other than the parental or the generational transfer, is a relationship transfer. So the dynamic of the relationship catalyst, if you will. Toxic relationship. See, narcissism thrive within the realm of relationships, particular toxic ones. Men are often culturally conditioned to pursue multiple partners, beloved, become ideal vessels due to experiencing toxic relationship from various individuals, because society has taught men at a young age that to be a man you must experience multiple women, and this create a spiritual breeding ground for multiple soul ties and personality confusion. Personality confusion is pretty much the accumulation of toxic relationships, which contributes to spiritual personality and confusion, infection, or development of spiritual personality disorders. The narcissistic personality becomes a defense mechanism or a spiritual superpower, especially in coping with fears and insecurities. We see this, in a sense of, you know, ego, right? Trauma is the next one. So we know that guardian parent or family members, siblings, women have to be careful, because women, sisters, and mothers are very influential to men. So we see where parents influence, create that environment, and pass down that spirit is manifested through that. We see also where relationships, especially men or women, when you go to different partners, you deal with different spirits, different soul tie, and those different toxic behavior begin to crown that narcissistic person to become the perfect vessel to house that narcissistic spirit. Because that's what the spirit is looking for. It's looking for a vessel. So it has to mold that person into that. The next thing is trauma. Trauma is a catalyst, because trauma now creates a fear based narcissism. Oh, this is a big one. This is a big one because fear and trauma, particular fear-based narcissism, can lead to spiritual coronation of narcissistic personality, real spiritual crowning. The fear of loss, whether it be material possession, relationships, or abandonment. Some of you are in relationships now where you see it play out with your spouse, where that spouse is afraid of being broke, afraid of losing money, afraid of losing things, so they might hoard everything. That's a fear that is causing that. So they become spiritually, they have this spiritual driving force. Individuals with fear of being alone may engage in constant relationship hoping for a change. So they end up hopping from relationship to relationship, hoarding, hoarding things, and battling over materialistic possessions, creating a sort of a spiritual facade of strength to avoid appearing neglected. Because they really don't want to seem like, actually, they don't want to feel neglected. So instead, what they end up doing is neglect you. The crowning of a narcissist, I mean a king, involves a profound spiritual manifestation, shaping behavior as spiritual beings. It initiates with spiritual transfer of traits. We talked about that too, you and I. Gains momentum through spiritual charged relationships and solidified through spiritual fears, trauma, and drive an individual to seek strength in a narcissistic personality. Understanding the spiritual process, I keep coming back to that. If you understand the spiritual process of narcissistic personality disorder, it will provide the type of insight that you need to address the healing and the root cause of narcissistic behavior on a profound spiritual level. But I got news for you. The fight, when that person, when you discover that this is spiritual and you begin to target this thing from a spiritual standpoint, you are now fighting against the spirit. This is a harder fight than when you are dealing with and trying to treat a narcissist from a psychological place. This is why this is not something that the victim can target unless they are a sound, strong, spiritual person. But understanding this thing from a spiritual place changes the approach totally and now require a level of deliverance, if you ask me.